And oftentimes the diagnosis is not very useful. So it is about chronic diseases and the root causes that cause them. Like it's just a chronic pattern that I see over and over again.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the I Am Painfree podcast. Today we have a truly inspiring and transformative conversation lined up for you. Our guest is Dr. Diane Mueller, a renowned expert in holistic health and chronic pain management. Diane's personal journey from debilitating pain, just like my tongue is debilitating me right now, to becoming a leading authority in Lyme disease, mold illness, and chronic infections is nothing short of remarkable, right? Literally, in this episode, Diane shares her gripping story of overcoming severe pain and how it propelled her into a career dedicated to uncovering the root cause of chronic conditions. We dive deep into intricacies of how undiagnosed infections and toxins can wreak havoc on our nervous systems, leading to chronic pain and other debilitating symptoms. But as this episode isn't just about identifying problems, she also reveals strategies and tests necessary to get to the bottom of these issues, emphasizing the importance of self-advocacy and proper diagnosis. So her insights are how to reprogram and distress the nervous system, provide practical and hopeful solutions for anyone struggling with chronic pain. So join us as we explore this connection between mind, body, and spirit, something we're always talking about here on the I Am Painfree show. And we're going to learn how faith, resilience, and the right approach to health can even turn the toughest trials like hers into triumphs. So Dr. Diane's wisdom and experience offer a beacon of hope for many of us who are struggling. So if you're ready to uncover those hidden factors in chronic pain and discover a pathway to a pain-free life, let's stay tuned and let's listen to this amazing Dr. Diane. Hey everybody, this is Rob with the I Am Painfree podcast. I'm so excited. We've got an amazing guest today. We have Diane Mueller here today. So Diane, thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks, Rob. We're gonna have a great talk about all these different ways and root causes and exciting ways to get pain-free.
Awesome. As everyone knows, the whole heart of this show is to help people get pain-free and try to do it naturally and faithfully. The more I researched about you and what you do, it's just a perfect marriage with that topic. So exciting. For people who don't know you, I'd love you to just give us a background. How did you turn out to be the awesome person that you are today?
Yeah, it actually links into our topic of pain, my story. So I dealt with some crazy stuff, Rob. Like at one point I had pain so bad that it felt like the way I would describe it is my legs were being sawed off.
No.
So it was like, that was pretty brutal, right? And then I had fibromyalgia, I had chronic headaches. I had so many different types of pain, as well as all the things that go with that, right? So then it's like rage and depression and all the emotional components of that, as well as chronic fatigue and exhaustion. And it just went, the laundry list was probably 30, 40, 50 symptoms deep at one point.
Wow.
And
that's brutal.
it was brutal. It was brutal. And some of that was largely what led me into holistic health. Cause I think so many people that end up in pain, you get a diagnosis and it's just the end point. And oftentimes the diagnosis is not very useful. It's not actually saying why, right? It's not telling us why somebody is in pain, why somebody has these symptoms. So that really spun me in my medical research into a very different direction when this was happening. And it made me the expert that I am today in Lyme disease and chronic hidden stealth infections and mold illness and all these types of things that we actually see in research and studies. We see that like these infections, they will cause our nerves to actually inflame. They'll even cause our nerves to die. Basically, fibromyalgia is a really good example of the nervous system being impacted and the pain threshold changing. For example, with things like fibromyalgia, an example I like to give is bumping a hand very gently, say on my desk right now. And with somebody without a sensitive nervous system, with a healthy pain threshold, that just feels like no big deal, like no problem, right? But then when we have these things that are inflaming the nerves, such as hidden infections, such as toxins, what winds up happening is that threshold of tolerance changes where I have a little bump and my brain interprets that signal as pain. So the point too I'm trying to make in this is so many times we get these diagnoses. We get chronic regional pain syndrome, we get fibromyalgia, we get chronic migraines, we get all these different types of diagnoses. And it's so easy for people to be like, oh, finally, I have a diagnosis. I know what's wrong. And actually, it's more, no, you don't. You have a something we can call this. But as
Ah,
far as what's actually leading to that, what the cause is behind these symptoms, that oftentimes has not been discovered. So I like to look at the diagnosis, whatever diagnosis we're talking about when it comes to pain. I like to look at it as like the beginning point and not the end point.
yeah, that's amazing. I love that. I love that flipping it, because what happens, I think, in a lot of our society today is people will get that diagnosis and then they accept that diagnosis as the endpoint. And then they just start taking medicine, aka pills, for that. And then that causes a side effect. And then they go see another specialist, and so on and so forth. It just becomes a nightmare of the situation that our medical system is in today. So I love the fact that you use that as the beginning point to say, okay, now let's go discover how is this coming about.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And then it leads to the question around what tests do I do? And I think a key point that is essential for us to make here is it's really important that as I'm throwing out different things, Lyme, mold, Babesia, Bartonella, Epstein-Barr, all these different types of infections and toxins, it's really important that we don't just go to our standard doctor that maybe doesn't understand these diseases and ask for a test. And the reason is the correct test is makes all the difference in the world. Plus, a test is not only good, only as good as the being the right one, but also as the interpreter. And I'll give you an
Mm,
example. Like Lyme disease is so and I should say underdiagnosed. The first line standard of care test, there's a study out there that is actually shows that the first line standard of care test for Lyme disease has a 67% chance of a false negative.
ah,
And that's what we're using, right? So it's if we hear things on podcasts like today, it's like, oh, I should get checked for this because I heard this podcast and they said Lyme disease and pain. Yes, you should get checked for it, but you want to make sure you're really getting checked by somebody who understands what tests to use because that will also lead a door to be closed sometimes on a root cause that actually is the legit problem.
right. Yeah, that's so interesting, because not, yeah, like you said, it's like knowing the right test is super duper important, but then also to make sure the person that you do the test with knows how to interpret it. And
Yeah.
Lyme is just such an interesting problem. That's amazing that the main test they use is 60% wrong. That's like, how that sucks. Okay, so more often or not, it's not going to recognize it even if you do have it. It's bad enough when you get diagnosed with Lyme, but probably worse is if you have Lyme and you get misdiagnosed as not having it. Then you go
Correct.
down a whole different rat hole of trying to figure out what's wrong with you. When if you would have done the right test with the right person to interpret it, you might have found the source earlier. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, sometimes that cause is staring us like in the face. It's the elephant in the room,
right,
but yet we just don't know because we're not being told the right information. And oftentimes, too, with this whole thing of not a lot of time being spent with patients just because of how things are right now, I think oftentimes we're not thinking outside the box to actually ask the whys and actually doing the research to make sure that we're behind the most appropriate tests that are out there. So there's a lot of different things that are going on, but the biggest thing is just being a self advocate and double checking. Just like we double check a lot of things in life. There's a lot of systems in life that have check and balances, and our health should be that way too. Getting that second opinion, those sorts of things is really a worthwhile thing, especially when it comes to these chronic disease processes. Because the other thing that happens is we see that when we have these neurological imbalances, right? When we have things that are changing this threshold of pain and our nerve cells are dying and they're inflamed and all these things that sound scary and they are, but they're actually fixable and treatable most of the time. But one of the things that can happen is some of the same disease processes that we're talking about that can lead to pain are sometimes the same disease processes that we're now seeing potentially linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. Another thing I look at with pain is, like I do with a lot of different conditions, is that's the body's, say, check engine. That's a signal that is telling us to look. And the benefit, the silver lining, and I say that with the deepest compassion as somebody that has gone through chronic pain, but the silver lining is sometimes for other people, maybe there's this disease process that's happening that isn't going to show up until they're 65 and then they get Alzheimer's, versus somebody that is actually manifesting this symptom, as bad as it is, it might be an earlier check engine light that actually potentially could save somebody's life.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Going down that storyline, it's like if you have pain and you diagnose it correctly and you fix the underlying condition for that pain, it might save you from eventually getting to the point where you have a really bad disease that is hard to recover from. So,
Correct. Yeah, that's
yeah.
exactly right. That's
That
exactly right.
makes really good sense. To explain a little bit about what happened to you, why did you have such a really bad experience, and what did you end up doing to figure it out? Sounds miserable.
Yeah, it wasn't the best time of my life.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
It's really a lot of things that we're talking about here, Rob. It is going and doing the right lab tests, figuring out what it was. And for me, it was a combination. It was Lyme disease, it was Bartonella, which is another bacteria, it was Babesia, which is a parasite, it was mold toxins, it was elevation of heavy metals, it was elevation of other pesticides. And as I'm giving this laundry list, it can sound like, oh my gosh,
Right.
how did I get all these things? But
Yeah.
really the vicious cycle of the body, and when we say like root cause, really what we should be saying oftentimes in medicine is root causes, because the vicious cycle of the body oftentimes is when one thing gets out of balance, it can create more and more things that are out of balance if we don't fix it. Like, for example, we now know that Lyme disease can be acute, but then oftentimes it goes dormant and we think we're fine and we have no symptoms. So similar to chickenpox and how it can manifest later in life as shingles. So similar to that, Lyme is something that people can catch. They can think it's the flu. They don't get many symptoms. Other people, of course, get more sick acutely, but for a great many, it just like passes. It's self-limiting. The body takes care of it. It goes into dormancy. What brings stealth pathogens out of dormancy? Other things that stress the immune system out, stress in general. So, for example, one of the theories right now in this whole community is that people move into, say, a house that has a lot of mold in it, which is actually fairly common. It's estimated that about half the buildings in the United States are water damaged and highly likely may have mold. So it's pretty
Yikes.
common, right? So if people will say with this dormant bacteria that's hidden, then all of a sudden go to a building with mold, theoretically, one thing that could be happening is that then the immune system almost like diverts its attention to go and try to fix the more active thing, breathing in those mold toxins. And then it's not available to help prevent the Lyme from, say, staying dormant, or help keep the Lyme to stay dormant, I should say. And when that happens, then all of a sudden we get this resurgence of the Lyme, and then we have all these mold toxins. And now we have two problems the immune system's dealing with, two major problems.
Right.
And then it's so easy once that happens, because now we have our detox pathways busy and they can only move so fast. And we have our immune system busy and that can only work so hard. Everything in the body has a rate limit of how fast it can fix things, right? And so if everything has reached its rate in the body, and we encounter another infection or another toxin, it's really easy for the body to just start accumulating these things because it's already working as hard in these areas as much as possible. So that's where I think disease, and when we're talking about chronic pain in this episode, that's where I think it can really get out of control, is because then we get our helmet and our blinders on and we're oftentimes looking for that one thing.
Right.
And then when that doesn't work, it can be like that was bad, or that was wrong, versus maybe we've accumulated a thing and that one thing was actually important, but it's 1/16 of the puzzle because of this accumulation nature that tends to happen over time with health. And that was certainly my story. That's certainly the story that I see with a lot of my patients. It's certainly the story I talk about in my book. Like, it's just a chronic pattern that I see over and over again.
Yeah, that's really interesting because a lot of times when I talk to people, it isn't, they don't explain it that way. That that not only pain, it usually has a source and there's a reason why you end up having that pain, and then there's ways to fix that pain. But what you're talking about is coming from your personal experience where you were dealing with multiple things at the same time, and then I was like, okay, how do you fix that, and then in what order you fix it, and then because your body can only start repairing itself in so much of a way. And so that's just really intriguing that your patients show that too. It's a lot of times more than one thing. And then discovering what to fix and what to fix first is more of the puzzle, right? Instead of just finding the source.
Yeah, I think we gotten confused, I think, in medicine around acute versus chronic situations. Acutely, of course, there can be one source of pain. We fall, we break our leg, that's our source of leg pain, right?
Yeah.
We get a strep throat infection, our throat hurts, we feel real bad, we get rid of the strep, that goes away. So we see so much in acute medicine, this one root cause. And with chronic medicine, I just don't see it being that way. In fact, in almost 15 years of practice, I have yet to see one person, and I really only work in chronic care. I will help my chronic patients with acute scenarios, but I do work only in chronic care. So I say that with that lens. But I've
Right.
never seen somebody with only one root cause. And I think it's, even if somebody does have, let's say somebody has some sort of sports injury, where we can say, okay, yes, they sprained an ankle really bad or they broke a bone really bad. It can start acutely, but
Right.
then if they don't do the proper care and the pain continues, and all of a sudden maybe they're not walking. And if they're not walking, then it's, what's that leading to over time? Maybe that's leading to weight gain, or maybe it's leading to lymphatic problems and their detox system backs up. I think we can have chronic problems that certainly start more as like a one situation, a one root cause.
Right.
But I'm still waiting. The way I say it all the time is I'm still waiting for somebody to break my batting average, because right now, as far as patients actually having only one root cause, I'm
Right.
still batting 1,000 with that never being true.
Wow.
And I don't ever use never and always in medicine. So I know there's going to be somebody that breaks my batting average.
Right.
But
Right.
for right now, I'm batting 1,000.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really interesting because I haven't even contemplated that. Obviously, I know that it happens, but I hadn't contemplated that it's everybody in every situation. And you batting 1,000 is a pretty. That's a pretty good, evidence that is very common.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's
That's what I'll say out of that. I know somebody out there is going to break that. I know there's never always and there's always never. But I also know from what I've seen that it is very common, and there's a very high amount of people for sure that have more than one root cause and a
it's so
blinder. Like I
intriguing.
see this oftentimes even in my work, in people that come to my office, say with a Lyme disease diagnosis. And they'll want this, they'll be like, okay, Dr. D, what's the magic wand? What is that special treatment that I have that nobody else does? And I do things differently, of course. Like I have my own approach. And one of the other things see is that so many times, if people have seen a dozen other doctors that are very good at what they're doing and nothing has worked, it's generally not going to be the special treatment at that point. It's going to be that, hey, everybody is looking at the disease only from the Lyme hat without actually
Mm.
taking the Lyme hat off and saying, what other hats actually exist in this disease process?
That's interesting. Yeah, because then you come in maybe at a different angle that other people hadn't even thought of, which allows you to help people. That's well. So what's intriguing about that is you were trained to do that by healing yourself, figuring out how to do that. All those trials and tribulations you went through trained you to be the amazing person that you are. So that's I find that often in the respect that I'm a faithful person, so I believe in God and I believe that He's put me on this earth for a reason. And it's like it seems as I go back and look at my life, it's like He's chiseling me. He's just training me for the person He wants me to be. And it's like wow, I look at that in your situation too. It's like He unfortunately he went through a really horrible time, but He trained you right to go. Now you're helping people in a really significant way by the trials and tribulations that you had. So I like to tell people that hey, if you are in a really tough situation right now, that it's okay because guess what? You're going to get through it and that you're going to be a better person because of that trial and tribulation. It might not seem like it. No one likes to be in a trial or tribulation, but hey, let's get through it. Have a positive attitude. And when you do get through it, you'll be able to look back on it and say, hey, yeah, that was for a reason. And I'm going to learn from that reason. I'm going to be a better person from that. So anyway,
Yeah, I really love using the both and approach with that sort of thinking. So, meaning, I really personally feel that it's important for people to be so self compassionate with saying, yeah, this really is hard. This is really hard. And actually feeling like energy of the emotions and the depression, the sadness, the anger, the frustration, all the things that come with it.
yeah,
And the problem that I find that people can get in, and I think faith is a great way out of it, is one of the problems I see is that within we can get stuck in those emotions of I'm never going to heal, my life is over, this is so hard, which may all have an element of truth, right? It's definitely hard. I don't believe
yeah,
the never going to heal part because I really believe in the body being able to heal, but
yeah,
I do believe in, hey, this is really hard and this is one of the most challenging things, and actually feeling that. And I think sometimes it's very difficult for us to, as humans, live in the paradox of I can both believe that this is the hardest thing and have faith that this is going to teach me something and that I'm going
right,
to come out of it a stronger person. And we can actually hold both of those things at the same time, the faith, like you're talking about,
right.
but also just, yeah, this is really challenging, and allow ourselves like compassion and self kindness and all of those things. I really like from Christian standpoint, I really like the whole, you have to love yourself. I can't remember how Jesus says this, but it's something like love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. That's what it is.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, and my mom, said this so well to me one day, I just really can see why this is said, because you can't really, if you don't love yourself entirely, then how are you going to ever be able to love your neighbor to the level that Jesus wants?
Right.
And my mom was so wise in the way she like framed that, because I think what I see in that sort of statement from the Christian teaching there is, in this example, it's okay, how can I feel like that ultimate compassion for myself in the pain? Like somebody would for their sister, their mother, their friend. How can we sink into that and love ourselves so much for all of the hardness, and at the same time realize that the silver lining and how hard it is that yes, we're going to learn, we're going to grow, we're going to become stronger, we're going to do great things because of this experience
Right.
and everything you said. So I really like that both and approach to the
Yeah,
story.
I love that too. And a lot of people are in a depressive state right now with what's going on in the world. It seems like everything is negative. You turn on the news, it's all negative, and it's maybe your health isn't where you want it to be, and that's negative. Maybe your work's not going the way it should be, and that's negative. And just people are really in a depressive state. But I want to get people to just have that hope, right? That there is hope for a better future. And if you can just switch that from negative to yes, it sucks, but right, like you said, right, and this is for a reason, and I do have hope. And when you have hope, it's so powerful, and it can really change you. And a lot of things that I've been learning through this journey of pain and trying to help people with pain, how incredible God made our bodies. That like
Mm,
you said, you believe in healing, right? That it will heal if you give it the right setup, right, and the right thing. So anyway, I just love that part of this equation is let's figure out how to help people, and you're doing that on a daily basis. So I'm super excited. So tell me more about your book. I'm interested to learn more about that.
yeah, the book's really exciting because the book really is about it. I look at it as a survivor's guide. So it is about chronic diseases and the root causes that cause them. So we talk about toxins and infections and mold and thyroid and adrenals and gut health and on. It's called It's Not in Your Mind, because so many times I find people with chronic illness have a lot of labs that look normal,
Uh,
and all of a sudden we see that, hey, there's something really going on and the right labs are not being run. So yeah, the standard labs look normal because they are, but there's much deeper things we can do to find these root causes. And I know it's like something that happens to so many people when labs are normal, is it's just this has got to be in your mind versus, hey, there's something really going on here. So it's named that way because of that. So that's why it's not in your mind as the title. And then it's basically the 4-phase process that I use for healing most of my patients, and including like when to think about various labs. I also have a link in there to my online quiz. My quiz is the just getwellnowquiz.com. So super
Awesome.
easy. And basically I have a link in the book there. But what that does is it's a online quiz that I hired a developer to help me do. So it's like a super detailed quiz, not one of the quiz builders you can find online.
Right.
And I did it that way because what I wanted to help people with is jogging them to think about at least what types of things they should be looking for and researching for, as well as what types of things they should be asking their doctor about. So it's totally free, and it's just there to help support people to say, hey, if to basically be a self advocate, so that people can take this and say, I need to ask my doctor to run this, or I need to talk to my doctor about that. So that is also integrated into the book, as well as even things around like how to doctor shop, like what kind of questions to think about interviewing a doctor for, to know if they're the right fit and they're going to be able to help you. So that's really how I built it, is, hey, this kind of guide, this kind of survivor's guide companion to the healing process.
That's so amazing, because that is a couple of things you've said throughout this conversation. I think are really, I want to highlight, because I think they're really important. One of them was to get a second opinion, right? And to not just take what one person tells you and for a fact and just go with it. And that pairs itself with another key topic that you've mentioned, is doing your own research, right?
Yes.
And be your own advocate. As you mentioned, we have to do that, because nobody else, the doctors, unfortunately, these days are specialized for one instance, and two, they're not there to look at you holistically, and you have to do that for yourself. You have to say, okay, this is my body, my problem. And yes, they're telling me that my labs are coming back great, but I still feel like crap. So something else is going on. So then what is that? I think you have people want to have everybody go grab her book, right? Read the book, and then use that as a guide to get you there, because then that leads to the third thing, right? Not only being your own advocate, but doing your own research, but then finding the right people to help you, right? So that second opinion may become a third or a fourth opinion as you're discovering the right people to help you. Because I've been down this journey of all natural and holistic health just in the last couple of years, right? So this is all new to me, and something you've been doing for a really long time. So, but fun for me, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's all these things, all these modalities, all these different types of people, and all of these just areas that I'm exploring that are just opening my mind up to so many different areas of health. Because now I'm just a huge health advocate, right? I want people to do things naturally as much as possible. I think there's a time and a place for modern medicine, but I just love what you're doing. Your book sounds amazing. So hopefully we can get everybody to go buy your book. So remind us the name of the book.
It's Not in Your Mind by
It's
Dr.
not in
Diane
your
Mueller.
mind. That's
Yep.
so cool. That's so
Yep.
cool. I love it. Where do they find it? What's the best way to find it?
Amazon, super easy. Yep.
Okay.
Amazon all around the world. So wherever you're listening from, you can probably find it in your local Amazon.
Nah, that's great. How long has it been out?
Just over a year.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, just over a year. We just got the Audible done on it last month. So now there's the Audible version of it as well. So it's accessible in all forms.
There you go. I like
Yeah.
the Audible thing, because I personally use that more often than I do reading, just because I'm
Me
so
too.
busy doing things. You get the podcast you listen to, you go get a book. It's really hard to sit down and read the physical book nowadays. We're so busy, but I can, while I'm doing something, throw in my ear pods and listen to something. So that's
Exactly
great.
right.
Great that you've done that. So this has been so fun. What else do you think is important that we missed that you'd like to address today?
I think one of the other things that I just see so common is this cycle of how the nervous system can get locked in a certain way. And
Okay.
so, what I mean by that is a lot of people have heard of that rest and digest, fight or flight, kind of those two major parts of the autonomic nervous system.
Right.
And what can happen though is when we go through anything chronic, that is a stress on the body. Oftentimes it's like analogous in many ways to a PTSD situation. So we can be in this fight or flight dominance. And one of the neurotransmitters, one of the brain hormones that gets secreted during fight or flight is adrenaline. So most people
Mm,
have heard of adrenaline, that, hey, it's an emergency. I'm going to lift a car off of somebody to help them. but it's also secreted during these long-term sustained stressors. And we see a lot of problems with this, but one thing that we see is in certain infections, for example, it can make the biofilm, which can serve as this outer protective wall of the microorganism, it can actually make that biofilm stronger. And when the biofilm is stronger, it can actually aid in the way that the microorganism cells communicate. And there's a very medically way of saying adrenaline can make your infection worse.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of these types of examples where we see this fight or flight actually can worsen the disease process. When the disease process worsens, then it puts people more in fight or flight. And there's that vicious chicken and the egg. While I see that it's super important to get all of the root causes of the body, it's also important to stop this cycle. And it might be the disease that started this cycle, but if we're constantly fighting against our own nervous system, that's really there for survival, right? It's like that adrenaline's kicking off because it's our survival mechanism. It's trying to help us. But a lot of things that happen with disease are these types of mechanisms that are really innately good, but they just go haywire and they get a little bit off kilter, and then they actually contribute to the negative process. And so the work that we do to really get somebody out of this state, I think is actually, it's not the only thing. We got to get to the physical root causes, but I think it's super important to mention. And if it's prayer, if it's meditation, if it's visualization, if it's deep breathing, there's a lot of different ways we can get the nervous system out of that type of state. But just making sure that people have something every day that they're coming back to, because the ability, what I've seen too, the ability for people to get well and stay well is hugely related. It's not the only factor, but it's hugely related to the ability of the nervous system to re-regulate. So I always just like throwing that into the conversation as well.
No, that's actually really interesting. So, I think it's awesome. You end up saying, "If here, how do you do that?" And so you mentioned a couple of things. What it was, maybe reading, right? Maybe praying, maybe meditating. What were the other things? It was, I think,
Visualization,
okay,
breath work
right,
works really well.
gotcha.
Sometimes certain activities that really get somebody into the flow state, that flow state is almost that mindfulness type of state where you're not thinking about anything but that activity. So certain types of sports, like that's how I am. I love to snowboard and I love to go through the trees
I
because I'm
love it.
so concentrated on turn here, turn there, so because I don't want to hit a tree,
Right,
that
right.
it really helps me like get into that flow state. And that flow state where there's no room in that because we're so present on the moment. There's not the possibility for any of that other stuff to sneak in because we can't. So sometimes dancing will do that for people. But there's other types. There's some sports will do it. Some sports will not. If you find like yourself running, for example, and your brain is thinking about this thing or processing that, running can still be good for other things, but it's probably not doing this thing.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. That's very interesting. So the idea is to de-stress your nervous system. Is that accurate?
De-stress, and I would also use the word here reprogram. So,
Okay.
because we want people to be literally reprogramming where a small stress is they're becoming more resilient to, and it's not triggering that same type of adrenaline, which can create that disease process. So it's almost re-regulating the nervous system, just like we're talking about fibromyalgia and pain and that threshold. We want to raise that threshold so it takes a much higher stress for our nervous system and our adrenaline to get triggered. Of course, we want it available for us in those times where it's really necessary.
Right.
But oftentimes we recondition our nervous system for small little things to have this huge adrenaline rush. And not only does that create a very unhealthy disease process, it also just doesn't make us feel very good. It doesn't lead to a lot of happiness in the world and happiness in ourselves and those sorts of things. So multifactorial here.
No, I like that a lot because then if you get a healthy nervous system and reprogram, was not how you said it? Then you can get your body in a state that it can start helping with the other areas that you need to work on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Healthy nerves, happy life.
yeah, there you go. Happy nerves, happy life.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So I love it. You've given us a ton of great information. I'm so excited to get this out to people, and just what a pleasure to meet you.
Same here, Rob. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure as well.
Yeah, I'm just so excited for people to learn more about your book, and hopefully we can get people to listen and watch and read your book. And where else do they find more information about you?
My Lyme Doc, like mylymedoc.com. But I always like to tell people that is my Lyme, like the disease, Lyme, and not my Lyme, like the fruit. I am not a fruit doc. I am an actual Lyme bacteria doc.
I love that. I love that. So mylyme.com. Is that
You
right?
got it.
That's fantastic. So we'll make sure we have that in the show notes for everybody. And then we'll make sure that we have a link to your book too. We'll make sure we do that, and so people can easily find that. And just, man, what a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for just continuing to do the amazing work that you are doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for spreading the word and helping so many people get over their pain. Really appreciate
Yes,
it.
amen. Amen. All right, God bless. We're signing off from the I Am Pain Free podcast. If you enjoyed in this episode, you might be expecting a sales pitch for a pain relief solution. But here's a pleasant surprise. I'm offering a 3-episode pop-up podcast absolutely free. This exclusive 3-episode private podcast series is packed with more value than many paid programs out there. And getting access to this is a breeze. If you're listening on your phone, simply open up your text messaging app and send the word pain free. It can be 1 or 2 words to 41 pain free. So that's 417-246-3733. Again, that's 417-246-3733. If you're not a fan of texting, no big deal, right? Just visit impainfree.com. Super easy. impainfree.com. You can access this private podcast series instantly for no cost. Right? This isn't just any podcast series. We call it Beyond Pain, the triple B blueprint for pain-free existence. It really is a treasure trove of secrets, expert interviews, and a resource vault, all aimed at guiding you to live pain-free naturally and faithfully, right? My passion. It's a rare and value-packed resource that we're thrilled to share with you. So don't wait. Just grab that cell phone, grab your text messaging app, type pain free in there, and just send it to 417-246-3733. Or, like I mentioned, go to impainfree.com and unlock this exclusive content, all completely free. God bless.